All right, guys, so this is our vocab for the end of the chapter. This is angle pair relationships. That would be our heading for it. The very first one we're going to talk about is something called vertical angles. Now, this is a very important word. We're going to be using this word and its definition for just about almost every chapter that we have left in the book. So vertical angles, two angles are vertical angles if their sides form two pairs of opposite rays. The really important thing here is to know that vertical angles are congruent to each other. So let's take a look at that. So we would say that these two angles right here, angle A and angle A, that they are congruent. And how we show that here in geometry is we would do one tick like that. And that would let us know that those two angles are congruent to each other. Now, vertical angles, I sometimes call them little bow ties because they look like a little bow tie that you would have tied on your neck. And then we would say that angle B and angle B here are also vertical angles. And that's how we show congruency in geometry when looking at an angle. You see how I did a double arc here? So that means that both of these are double arcs, so they have the same measure, and that these have a single arc, so they have the same measure. So this would be vertical angles, and then these two would be vertical angles. And again, the most important thing to know is that these angles are congruent. Here we can also show this right here. So even if I said that if I called this angle A, angle B, angle C, and angle D, let's say I did that, then we would say that angle A and angle B are vertical angles. So I could even go like this. And I could say that angle A and angle B are vertical angles. Now the same thing can be said about angle C and angle D. They are also vertical angles. And that's why they're going to have just one little tick mark. And we can see that angle D and angle C have the same measure of 65 degrees. So angle D and angle C are considered vertical angles, and they also have the same measure. So their angle measures are congruent. All right, the next word we're going to talk about is a linear pair. This is also another important idea that you're going to see play out throughout the entire year. So two adjacent angles are a linear pair if their non-common sides are opposite. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So we would say that angle CAB, so that would be this angle right here, and angle CAD, which would be this angle right here, we would say that they form a linear pair. The other thing about angles that are a linear pair, they have to have a matching adjacent side. So the adjacent side that they both share is ray AC. And their measures also will add up to 180 degrees. So we can actually write angle DAC and angle CAB are a linear pair. And if I were to add up their angle measures, it would add up to 180 degrees. All right, we have two more words we're going to be looking at here. Our next word that we're going to be looking at here is complementary angles. Okay, so let's take a look at what that is there. So two angles are complementary angles if the sum of their measures is 90 degrees. Each angle is the complement of the other. Complementary angles can be adjacent or not adjacent. So what that means is that angles that are complementary can either be right next to each other or like connected, like that would be adjacent, or they can be, disconnected from each other, so that would be non-adjacent. The thing about complementary angles is that both of them, if we were to add them together, they equal up to 90 degrees. So we see here that this angle here and this angle here, if I add them, I get 90 degrees. So we would say that those two angles are complementary. Now, they don't have to be right next to each other adjacent. They can be like these two angles. And we can say that these two angles are also complementary, because if I were to add the 27 plus the 63 degrees, then I would get 90 degrees. So that's what we call complementary angles. Now we would say that each angle is the complement of the other. Okay? All right, last word, here we go. Our last word we have here is supplementary angles. Two angles are supplementary angles if the sum of their measures is 180 degrees. Each angle is the supplement of the other. Supplementary angles can be adjacent or non-adjacent. Now, a lot of people confuse a linear pair and supplementary angles. The difference is, with a linear pair, they have to be adjacent. With supplementary angles, they do not have to be adjacent. They don't have to be stuck to each other. So that's the difference between something being a linear pair and something being supplementary. So all it's saying is that if you take the two angles and you add them together, so for instance, I have this angle and I have this angle. If I add them together, sorry, made a boo-boo there. Then their answer will be 180 degrees. Now, like I said, this would actually also be an example of a linear pair. So this angle would have a linear pair relationship, but this would also be supplementary angles. Now over here, I would not call this a linear pair, but these are still supplementary. Now, if you want to zoom in on those numbers. And the reason they're supplementary is because if I add them together, so if I add 125 and 55, I will get 180 degrees. So that is our vocab for the rest of this chapter. And again, the two most important words are vertical angles. So remember, vertical angles are congruent, and a linear pair. And then a linear pair, they do have to be adjacent. That's what makes it different from supplementary angles. People confuse those two. All right, I will see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.